Matt falls into quintessential mega church pastor.
Someone said you got to hit him with the bait and switch.
Bait and switch, baby.
Yeah.
But I just think this is not the era to be ambiguous and to be vague. How delusional a lot of these folks are about just the state of humanity and the state of men. Somehow I got out. Whoops.
Ruslan.
The Matt Chandler saga has been ongoing, and it's positioned in a really negative, disgusting light, in my opinion. From one side, people are saying there has to be something more to the story. There has to be something more to the story. There's no way the elders would have sat him down just for familiarity and frequency with a woman over Instagram. And then the other side says that even if that is what the elders sat him down for, that's patriarchy and toxic purity culture. It's a lose-lose situation for Village Church and Matt Chandler. But what came out from Preston Sprinkles, who is hosting a conference with Matt, but he sent out an email to his Patreon folks, and what came out, I think, is encouraging from one perspective, because this kind of shatters some of the speculation and the air of there has to be something wrong, right? And if everything we know to be true right now, would there be a single person that's and being nasty against Matt Chandler that would apologize for what they said?
I don't know, man.
I would be super curious about that, because a lot of folks drugged this man through the mud. They said it was because he was too woke on racial issues. They said it was because of fill in the blank, affiliation. He was too soft on women preachers, like all kinds of nonsense, okay? It's kind of small text here, so I'm going to read it to you guys, but it is blurry and pixelated. So this is from Preston Sprinkle. I reached out to Preston because we follow each other on Twitter, and so this is what he sent out as a statement. And again, maybe Preston is lying. Maybe everyone's lying. Maybe the elders are lying. Maybe Matt Chandler's lying. Maybe Preston's lying. Maybe everyone's just full of crap in this situation. But this is what this guy said. I don't know if we'd have this many people lying about
That's a lot of people.
These specific details, right? It's very hard to get a couple people to keep a secret. This many people lying just seems like it's a bit of a stretch. So here's what the statement says. Hey, friends, I just wanted everyone to know that I looked extensively into all the stuff involving Matt Chandler. I've talked to Matt twice and talked to a woman who's been on staff at the church for over 18 years. I can't share private details, but I will say that so much of the way popular media, secular and even Christian, is portraying it is pretty bad. And that even the church's messaging framed it in some pretty negative terms that could be misconstrued. So he's saying even the way that the framing and the language they came out with from the church is not the most accurate, which you kind of said that initially, Zach.
Well, especially after this post came out, I was kind of thinking they kind of played the dude with making it sound like bigger than it is, and it's able to blimp up into something of like, oh, maybe he's cheating.
Yeah. If this is accurate, what Matt is saying to Preston and I believe whoever this lady is, I think this is the executive assistant that I've corresponded with. If this is accurate, pretty interesting. So he says, the coarse joking was jokes about alcohol, not sexual innuendos or lewd jokes. So he's saying even the coarse joking wasn't for profanity. They weren't lewd jokes. They weren't sus. They were jokes about alcohol. And the big issue was that his DM relationship seemed too familiar, quote unquote, for someone that he didn't know terribly well in person. He basically violated the Billy Graham rule, which we've talked extensively here. Okay. To be clear, the woman he was messaging wasn't at all offended and told Matt, don't you dare apologize. You did nothing wrong, which is maybe why Matt didn't come out and say, I am sorry, I sinned, I apologize.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because maybe he legitimately didn't do nothing wrong.
I mean, yeah, maybe he didn't sin. Like, if you didn't sin, she's not offended. Right. You didn't sin against anybody. You didn't sin to the Lord. You really got nothing to apologize for.
Right. It was the woman's friend who lives by a very strict Billy Graham type of rule that was offended that Matt was DMing a married woman, even though Matt's wife and the woman's husband was fully aware of it. An independent org scourged his electronics and found no porn and no other inappropriate or romantic sort of messaging. All this to say, and this is maybe where Preston is covering his tracks. I don't think this is the energy that Preston's on. But he says, all this to say, I have no problem still having Matt speak at the Exiles conference this year. I mean, if we applied the same standards to all the speakers, I'm not sure I'd be able to have any speakers at the conference. Honestly, This whole thing has made me want to reintegrate that Billy Graham rule in my own life. People giving me a hard time because I do try to be extra vigilant in keeping my relationships with other women more cautious, but I've been thinking I should be more friendly and
Jovial.
But if situations like Matt's make me more nervous about this, I got to run.
He mentioned that he thinks that even the church's wording was a little aggressive, or maybe gave it room to spin. How do you think it should have been handled? And do you think there's a way for it to be handled where it didn't put Matt Chandler in the light of an adulterer?
That's a great question. I think that Matt falls into quintessential mega church pastor.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
He took over that church when he was relatively young, late 20s, early 30s. There's an archetype here with mega church celebrity pastors.
Okay.
I've said this before. If you want to go to a church of a guy who's 28, 29, 30, 31 years old as the head pastor, you do you, boo. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, totally.
I don't recommend it. So you got that going for him. You got the other stuff. We're not going to act like there wasn't other stuff. There was the pastor who got caught with Kitty, P-O-R-N. Ugh is right. The elders, not necessarily Matt, but some of the elders felt like the wife had no grounds to divorce him.
That's some 2005 John MacArthur stuff right there.
Super sus, right? Definitely Johnny Mac vibes all over that. That was in 2015, okay? So she gets up. I think she even got up for discipline. You got another guy who was a pastor who got fired, very vague, because they said he sinned against another adult in the church, and it disqualified him. Come to find out, several years later, he was teaching at another college, Christian college, Baptist college, and they found out that what had happened was that he had planted his cell phone. This is a pastor at Village Church, planted his cell phone in the shower of a male friend, and then the male friend found the cell phone. He was getting videos of him, and this was a pattern. So he lost his job because what had actually happened came out. He was He was struggling with same-sex attraction.
They covered it as
they were very vague back then.
Adult.
Sin against another adult instead of calling it for what it is. And so it's like that tension. Like, okay, these are folks who are married. They got families. How do you rebuke and sit them down? Right? So it definitely has that like mega church allure around. Not necessarily doing things like flat out wrong, but just probably not handling things flat out right either.
Yes. Okay.
Right? There's the leaked tape from, again, 12 years ago. He's at the elephant room. He's kind of talking crazy about other stuff, right? This is all on Julie Royce's article. She compiled all this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's been a archetype, an avatar, a megachurch avatar that he has fell in within these compounds.
Yeah, messing up with some sort of with the pastoral staff, messing up with some sort of internal stuff with families and counseling and stuff like that.
Yes. So if he fits this already, and there was a quote where he said like he's not a big fan of like shepherding people and being around people and that whole thing, which is, again, a lot of these guys are like that. They're not going to be in the lobby. They're not going to be hanging out. You're not coming over to their house for dinner. It's just
one time he goes out in the lobby, he
gets
dunked on.
And then the one time, then
what a girl's friend.
Yeah. And so what my theory is that there was probably things about his temperament. Maybe he was on edge. Maybe he wasn't super friendly. Maybe he wasn't super pastoral and shepherding. Okay, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Not sin, but just kind of sus.
But it was their in to give him a forced sabbatical in a sense.
You're going to take a break, bud.
Okay, so these are crazy accusations. And Matt, we've noticed some other things. And regardless of this situation, we think it's wise for you to take a leave of absence and get your stuff together.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
If we're going to blame the elders, if we're going to say the elders were at fault and the elders kind of threw him under the bus, I don't think their statement was that wild, but I think this is the elders being overcautious.
Yeah.
And if you take everything in with the pattern of all these little things, but just him out of his own mouth saying, like, I'm not a big fan of, like, being around people, and it's draining and exhausting. And I think it's very difficult for guys to be in the era where we just preach and don't shepherd.
So if there's nothing that's really going wrong and maybe they saw a few things that he should take a leave of absence for, couldn't they have done it not so publicly, like, and kind of saved face, but not just saved face, also just, like, save the scrutiny? Someone mentioned if you Google Matt Chandler or you look at Matt Chandler on YouTube, you don't see any sermons. You see 50 videos in a row on this. So, like,
I think this was them doing their best to be above board.
Okay.
To damage control. Those words were picked very carefully. I think they were trying to do their best, not understanding that in this age, he fits that avatar.
It's gonna spin.
It's gonna spin. This is the narrative that people, especially non-Christians, secondly, they love this narrative.
Do you think the term coarse jesting or what was the term they used?
Coarse gesturing. That's from the scriptures, though. It says don't be coarse jesting.
Yeah. So do you think they're just using it to be as biblically accurate and not as scapegoaty as possible? Like they don't want to be like, it's just a few jokes, and so then people spun it and thought it was bad.
Yep. And they did say this is for developmental and disciplinary. So they felt like he needed some degree of discipline, some degree of probably counseling, some care that he needed to go through. How and why, they won't know. But I just think this is not the era to be ambiguous and to be vague. In my opinion, especially if this lady's like telling Matt, you didn't do anything wrong, don't you dare apologize.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like I think most people that would have an affair with a pastor would also be like, you didn't do anything wrong, we're in love. You know what I'm saying? Like Carl Lentz side piece, she just saw the clout chase, the HBO joint, right? The Discovery Channel situation. She's like, he used his power dynamic as a mega church. It's like, come on, son.
Yeah.
Like you had a relationship with this dude, and now that it's time to be the victim, you're in here to be the victim. So I'm saying most people, especially when they didn't do anything in the wrong, are gonna be like, wait, no, we're just joking.
Unless he was down for a break and didn't think it would be this bad.
Yeah.
Unless he was like, yeah, you're right. I'm not in a great healthy spot.
So you think they handled it well, and they weren't over dramatic with their words, and it just has to run its course with the media.
I think they handled it well based on the information they had. Meaning this. A lot of these guys don't have the pulse on media. Yeah. A lot of these guys don't have the pulse on definitely don't have the pulse on social media. So I think they handled it well, thinking it was 10 years ago. You got to lean into all the details instead of trying to be vague. And if you don't, it's worse. It's a worse look.
Okay.
So I think that's what it was. I think they went and talked to some PR firm or whoever, and but this isn't how you handle stuff, especially if you actually care what the perception is.
Yo, how about Preston Sprinkles kind of dunking on all his other, not dunking on them, but the speakers. Just talking about kind of the standard. If I had to put all my speakers through the
that was like
the
runaround,
that was
kind of like a jab, low
kind of a jab, low key. But I think the point was to say, and I was talking to my wife about it because I was like, dang, you kind of threw these dudes under the bus, saying that maybe their computers aren't clean like that, But I think the point was to say, even if they were to find something, that it's very possible that someone can just be a little flawed or have a bad conversation with, or a coarse jesting conversation with somebody and still be qualified for leadership and just messed up. Right?
He said the wording made it seem like a Gavi situation and possibly ruined his credibility.
That's true. That's true, because Gavi did come out here with the, we just went through some things, a hard time. God's working on me. Gavi season. We sauce him forever. We come back in 9 months with an album type of situation. That is the pushback. Is like, you're too vague, right? And we see other dudes that are too vague.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot more to this situation.
Right. But they're not keeping up with this, with Gavi. They're not keeping up with other. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? These guys don't got a pulse on what's happening.
It's definitely not their fault.
The spread of information is faster today than it was 5 years ago.
Well, and not to mention, you can't be vague. If you're vague and you're in the wrong, things are coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's going to be.
And everybody has a path. Again, remember, I guess I could be empathetic to folks that are like, there has to be something more here, because they've seen the Gavis and the guys like that who over and over just been vague, and then more comes out and it's way worse than we expected. Yeah. And so they're just processing this based on the pattern of what they've seen already.
Yeah. But think about this. It's been vague and it's only gotten better. There's not a bunch of stuff rolling out where it's like, oh, it's unraveling. It's kind of like, oh, it's actually not as bad.
Yeah.
It was vague and now it's not as bad. It's probably exactly how it is.
Kind of said this from the gate. You guys thought I was crazy. It's private. When you're a public celebrity like this, when you're a public profile and you lead a church of thousands, I think it's better just to come out with it.
Yeah.
This is what it. Oh, oops. Got a leak.
The elder
somehow.
the elder. Yeah.
Somehow it got out. Whoops.
The elders message the lady like, "Hey, if you want to release them."
The lady's like, "This is what." If she really feels like there was nothing wrong, maybe she. I don't know.
And maybe she said it and they didn't want her to.
This whole thing is just gross. Like I'm just yuck.
Ugh.
Yuck. This is why this update's going on the Bless God Studios channel, because I'm just yuck.
Do you feel any conflict making videos in this sense when there's like hard news like this?
Do I feel conflict making videos?
As a creator, like, you know, putting Matt Chandler on a thumbnail.
Well, first of all, you make the thumbnails.
I mean, I'm just taking orders. You put him in fire on the thumbnail as well.
You put him in flames on a thumbnail.
I put him on flames.
Anytime you guys have an issue with a title or a thumbnail, that's usually Zach, and then I have him change it.
But not to mention, if you go back to all our thumbnails, anytime someone's in any sort of hot water or like they're the one on the hot seat, there's always flames.
I asked Zach to take Matt Chandler out of flames.
No, you didn't. You said for the next thumbnail.
Okay,
so
let's take him out of all.
I don't think we should take him out of flames because even today's thumbnail, Ruslan's in flames.
Why you got me in flames,
bro? Because flames aren't bad. God made fire. It's like heat. It's hot. It's not hell.
Refiner's fire, my desire. Remember that song? It sucks that bad news gets views. Like that's trash. Ruslan, why don't you do a Bible study?
Yeah,
we do them.
We do them.
And no matter how cool we package them, you guys don't watch.
But there's 130,000 people pulling up in a matter of 3 days to watch a Matt Chandler video.
Yes.
And not 130,000 people pulling up for a Bible study.
Oh, but we do the daily Proverbs. We're trying to work them into the daily streams. But I'm going to do one today.
Someone said you got to hit him with the bait and switch.
Bait and switch, baby.
Yeah.
That's the old school back in the day. You throw a concert. You'd have the skateboarders out there. You'd have the free pizza. And then you just hit them with the gospel. That's what we're doing. I learned it all in youth group. Get out of here.
I love it.
No, but like yesterday's video, right? Like we definitely wrestled with the title of like, do we lead with Matt Chandler? Do we not lead with Matt Chandler, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is that it did erupt a discussion, a very goofy discussion, over male and female friendships.
Yep.
And that was, I think, a necessary conversation to have. And I do think it's extremely necessary to acknowledge how delusional a lot of these folks are about just the state of humanity and the state of men.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of people push back saying you are on YouTube because you're getting out of having to be a pastor and pastor a local church. And what we realized before this, but especially with this, is that we're not like a ministry. We're not pastoring online. We have resources. We're really news, whether it's Kendrick Lamar or whether it's a pastor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like what I do and what Mike Winger does, or what I do and what Alan Parr does, is very different.
Oh, super different.
They are pastors. They are elders. They are ordained pastors. I am not.
But we saw other Christian YouTubers cover the same topic and get a fraction of the views that accumulated on our Matt Chandler video, the same topic, right? But it just shows that a lot of people that are on the Ruslan KD channel are there for news and cultural commentary.
Well, let's be honest. Our packaging is substantially better.
Yes, but
from a pure YouTube standpoint.
Yeah, but maybe the first thumbnail. But like the ones that followed were like,
I'm talking the first 30 seconds of the video. Like the packaging overall is better.
Yeah, but it's just title and thumbnail for views, because someone's gonna watch the first 5 seconds.
It's also algorithm. YouTube definitely shows us a lot of love in the algorithm.
Yes, I think people come to us for news, and if they don't go to you for news, they're not gonna click on your video.
How to study the Bible.
Yeah. Like we're not getting.
We made that a course. That was a video. MasterMyDevo.com was a video we put together that completely tanked.
Yes.
That Alan Parr was like, you should do a video on this. And I did. And no one watched it. Yeah. And Master My Habits is actually, that wasn't a video. That was just a course I did with my...
That was an idea off the back end. But yeah, it was that same thing. Like people are coming to us for news. They're not coming to us for Bible studies. So when we try to do a how to study the Bible, it flops. It's a really great course. It's a really great course.
It's actually a really good course.
But we just,
I definitely come to Ruslan's channel for entertainment and perspective on what's currently happening. Yeah, perspective, commentary, how to process what's happening. Yeah, I think that's totally different than why people probably watch, you know, a 2-hour Mike Winger video about egalitarian versus complementarian and women in ministry. You guys don't come here for that, and that's fine.
And it said that Simeon blessed God.